Hey, what's up, knitters? This is Jana with Purl Together. This time I want to talk about mistakes. So we all make mistakes. I don't care how proficient you are, how long you've been knitting. It happens, right? Sometimes things are just, you don't have your mojo. The knitting gods are not smiling. You get interrupted, you get distracted, you have to set things down and then come back and then you don't remember where you were, or a pet got into it and you come back and things are wonky. It happens, right? We all make mistakes. It's how you handle it that makes you the boss, right? I always say you're the boss of your knitting, and that doesn't mean that you are elevated above anyone else or like the hashtag boss knitter. I don't mean that in such a way that any of us are superior to anyone else. It's just that you have the choices, right? You have the ability to make decisions about what you want to do and how you want to handle things. That's all. That's all that means. So the same goes for mistakes. So if you're one that can overlook it, call it a design element, which I think is nonsense, but if you can do that and you can reach some level of acceptance with the mistakes that you've made and be okay with that, totally your choice, right? Obviously it's your choice, but you're the boss of your knitting. I don't have any judgment about that unless it's me, unless it's my own work, and then I have all kinds of judgment. So for me, the block of the month video that I posted last week, in this cable, there was I had inadvertently done an extra cable. There were offset cables where one column had a cable that occurred on row 2, and the column next door had a cable that occurred on row 4. Well, in my haste to get this video done, or Netflix knitting, I don't know, I just wasn't paying attention and I inadvertently ended up with an extra cable that shouldn't have been there, an extra twist. And a viewer noticed it, and truthfully, I didn't notice it at all until the viewer pointed it out, and then of course I'm like, oh crap, right? But now I have a decision to make. So do I go back and fix it or do I leave it? I'm the kind of person that's just a wee little bit OCD, and once I see it, I can't not see it, right? I've righteously ripped out 1,000 yards of shawl because I couldn't unsee a miscrossed cable way back in the beginning. I'll put a link to that video down below if you're interested in seeing the righteous rip of the big shawl. So I knew I was going to go back and fix it. So if you want to see how I fixed it, watch the whole video. But if you don't, and you just want to hear my view on mistakes, then that's what the point of this is. I just think that for me, I can't unsee that. And I think it's worth doing well. Hand knitting it's work, right? It's a big process. The issue, whether I fix a mistake or not, is whether I can live with it. This particular thing, a viewer had noticed it, but had I noticed it, I would have still gone back and fixed it. But truthfully, in my hurry to get things done this week, I didn't notice it. So I appreciate her pointing that out. Not that I want everybody to be super critical of my work. This is an heirloom quality Afghan, and I want it to be right. So I think there's a couple of reasons that people don't choose to go back and fix their mistakes. And then they call it a design element, which is a tongue-in-cheek thing to say when maybe, one, they don't have time and they don't want to take the effort or make the time to go back and fix their mistake. Two, maybe they don't know how to fix it and they just simply don't want to rip back. And I get that but YouTube, right? Google, there's a bajillion ways to learn how to fix things if you truly wanted to. Three, maybe it's just not that important. Okay, only you can evaluate that. I mean, I just think that hand knitting is worth doing right. It's worth fixing, and it's worth it. You've put in hours and hours into this project. So while one could argue, I don't want to put any more time into fixing it, the other argument is it's worth fixing and it's worth doing well. If you're the kind of person that can overlook a mistake and be okay with that in your own work, then that's fine. I'm not evolved enough to do that. Like once I see it, I can't get over it. It's going to bother me. So what follows here is the surgery of block 10, where I started picking it apart and kind of made a mess and had some cursing, and then it became okay. So all this is to say that you're the boss of your knitting, and if you find a mistake in your work, then I would encourage you to go back and fix it for the learning process, if nothing else. But if it's a super minor mistake and you don't care and you can live with it, then that's fine. because you're the boss of your knitting. All right, I'm looking over the block 10 that I just finished, and there is a mistake here, and at first it might not be that readily apparent. But if you notice these cables here, these are crossed 2 over 2 crossed over to the right, and they occur every 4 rows. And if you look, you can see I've inadvertently done an extra right there simply because I wasn't paying attention. So these should be offset where the cable cross occurs on row 1, or sorry, on row 2 of the pattern, and then this cable cross occurs on row 4. Well, what I did was inadvertently do this cable cross here, but I also, in addition to doing this one, I also did this one. Got distracted, wasn't paying attention, whatever, it happens. So now the choice is whether to leave it or fix it. And I'm going to choose to fix it because I can't unsee it and I don't want to leave it that way. So I'm going to take out the bind off. This is where I ended. And all I'm going to do here, I haven't woven in my tail, but I have kind of, just tucked that in. So now I'm just going to loosen that tail right here. And you can see that's going to come out right away, but I'm going to go ahead and put it back on my needles as I go. Okay, so you can see where I'm just picking out the bind off by pulling that, and it literally pops right out. And then I'm just going to go in under and pick this up. Now I am fully aware that I'm picking these up and that's the stitch orientation is incorrect. You can choose to correct that now or later, either way. But the loop that pops off that's on the top right there is not what you want to pick up. I'm picking up what's underneath right here. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way across until I have them all picked up. Then I will go and find the panel of 4 stitches that I want to weave, that I want to go ahead and ladder down in order to fix my monumental mistake. Or you can just go ahead and release that and then let the stitch pop to the center, lean to the center. If you're not concerned too much about dropping that, just go ahead and pop that off and let this lean to the middle. All right, now that I have all the stitches back live on the needle, I'm just going to take my other needle, slip my stitches all the way across until I get to the corresponding column. So that first one's always going to loosen up on you, and that's all right. I'm just going to slip as if to purl all the way across to where I need to be. So the mistake is here. So I'm going to need to ladder down all the way down to this is the last correct cable that I have. So what I'm going to do is just take this smaller diameter double pointed needle, and I'm just going to go in here and isolate those stitches. And I'm just kind of putting in it's just like a bookmark, if you will, just so I don't ladder down too far. And I know I only caught 3 of them, but that's all right. And I've isolated which 4 stitches it was up here on the top, because I can just follow that up and follow the column up to the very top. Now I've got my needles here, and I'm just going to pull those all the way through. Whoops, not that one. I'm just going to pull my working needles all the way through so that I don't inadvertently, pull something off. And I have the cable in the back. So those aren't going to go anywhere on the stainless steel needles. Now what I'm going to do is actually take my double point, and I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to start laddering down here, okay? And this is the part that's going to look intimidating and scary, but we know how to read our knitting. We know what to do here. So I'm just going to start lifting this off, picking that apart all the way down. As we're laddering this down, you can see how wool really holds its shape really well. And I'm pulling this apart on purpose, but if I were to just, drop a stitch, it wouldn't be that difficult to go and retrieve it. Okay, now that I've laddered this all the way down, I have the 4 stitches down here on this smaller double pointed needle. And I know that I've just completed a cross here. This was a cable cross right here. So I need to go 4 more. I just need to weave these 4 stitches up 4 rows and then do a cable cross and carry on. And just pretend like this is your working yarn. And it is, in fact. So we're just going to lift this up and over and create a knit stitch there and put it over here on the right. And we're going to do that again. We're going to find that working yarn strand behind that comes up, and just go ahead and pull that with your fingers. Manipulate that as if it's your working yarn, and you know, maybe you need to pretend that you're knitting continental for a minute. So my working yarn, that horizontal strand, I'm just going to pick that as if I were knitting continental, actually. Put it around to the back, and you can either leave it laid over the top if that's easier for you and lift it up and over and like that, or you can put it to the back as if you're knitting continental and then go in and pick it off your finger, whichever works for you. But there's the there's the 4 stitches that I have picked up now. And now I'm going to push my double pointed needle to the other side and do that a couple more rows. And then I'll show you how I'm going to reclaim the cable cross. Okay, let me show you that again. Here is my horizontal strand that I want to work with this time. Pick that up and over, put that over to the side. There we go. Or you can put it over your finger, the quote unquote working yarn. Whoops. You could put it over your finger like that and then go in as if to knit like you normally would and pick it off as if you're knitting in a continental way. And that works, whichever. Either way will work. Just get your stitches formed again. Now sometimes your quote unquote working yarn in the back is not, you don't have enough slack to get your finger in. So it's helpful to know both approaches, I guess. And your tension will all even out again. I may need to reblock this particular square. I probably will. But the yarn remembers where it was, and it may in fact settle back down in place, remembering the creases and the location of where it was. Okay. So now, there's my earlier cable crossover. 1, 2, 3, this is the 4th. So now I'm ready to make a cable cross again, and I know that I want to have the 2 stitches on the left trade places with the 2 stitches on the right. And since I'm repairing these with double points, I can literally just cross it over and change positions and put all of these onto the other side. Now doing that is going to take up some of that tension as well, some of that looseness. All right, so that does look a little funky. Some of that's a little funky, but I think it'll even out. We're just going to carry on and we'll ease it all back into place. Okay, you can see that this is where the mistake was. And so this yarn is used to being in a different shape because there was a cable in between. So that's going to need to be eased back in, and I might even be able to just spray that one spot and then kind of work it back together flat, because obviously it's not as flat as these, it's not as flat as its predecessors, and it's a little wonky. So there's just that one section that seems to need to be reformed a little bit. So I'll probably try to just kind of spot block that and, ease that back in, ease those fibers back where they're supposed to be to make it look right. But it's still better than having an extra cable where there shouldn't be. So I'm going to, again, if I'm twisting these and just changing positions with them, it's pretty easy to do. I'm not knitting as I'm doing this. I'm going to trade positions with the cables and then carry on picking up the horizontal strands behind. So I hope that helps and makes some sense. So we'll carry on doing this and I'll show you what it all looks like in a few minutes. I'm about halfway through my process. You can see this is where the initial mistake was. And the other thing that you can do, since it's not laying as flat as, the others, since we've picked at it and messed with it, is, you can go through with your end of your double point and try to just ease everything around and make it more even. And then I may try to spot block, as I mentioned earlier. But that does help to just try to even out the tension of stuff that we've picked up. So I'm about halfway through. And again, you could pin this out if you want, but I can plainly see what comes next. I mean, I can see which strand is next in the scheme of things. Pinning stuff out is super helpful if you're having to fix lace, for example, and you need things to go off in different directions to be able to kind of dissect it more and see what's what. But with this, being that everything's just horizontal, it's all pretty straight, and you can plainly see which strand comes next in the row. So I didn't really feel like pinning it all out was super necessary, and I actually find it easier to be able to pick up the work and stick my finger underneath there, hold up that strand since I know that that's the one that is next, and either go in like I'm knitting continental and pick that through, or lay it over the top as I showed earlier and draw that over the top and through the loop. Either way, but I think it's helpful to be able to lift it up off of the blocking mat and be able to see what exactly is happening. Okay, I've continued up my column and I've repaired everything up to where I need to do some purls, a garter stitch kind of stuff, and you'll now notice that I have 6 stitches on here instead of 4. That's because with all my picking up and messing about, there were 2 stitches that slipped off this needle, and then I had to capture them and keep those in the purl pattern as well, this purl ditch or valley between my cables here. So that's why I have 6 stitches on the needle now, where I had 4 when I started. So, you know, if you have some of those little rubber stopper thingies, yeah, probably should have gone and found a couple of those. I do have a couple, but I mistakenly thought I didn't need them. So that's where that stands. Now I just need to notice here that this next strand is attached to this purl row here. So I know that this next strand is going to be purls across. If we were going to make this into a knit stitch, we would simply pull this across. But that doesn't necessarily work with a purl because you need to have this on the other side. You need to have your working strand on the other side and go in underneath as if to purl, just like normal, and then scoop it back and in to make that purl stitch. Okay, I'll show you that again. Have this on the left side of the stitch that you want to work. Go in underneath, just like you're purling, and then go back and through. So if you think about how you make a purl stitch normally, that makes sense. And as that gets, if that gets a little bit tighter, you can just lay it across the needle and just make sure that it's on the left side of the stitch you're working. And that's how you would go and repair that. So I'm just, you know, moving that over to the left side of the stitch I want and scooping it in and through. Okay, last one. Make sure it's on the left, go in and under, and scoop that in and through. Okay, so you can see that now I've made those all into purl stitches. Now, remember this was garter stitch, so the next one needs to be knit. All right, I reached the point where I've done my 4 rows of garter stitch, or two knits and 2 purls. And now I'm up to row 5, which if you'll recall in our original pattern is where you alternate going across, you alternate knit, purl. So I want to keep that going, and you can tell I ended with a purl here. So this stitch is going to be a knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Let's double check and make sure that that's right. And it is, because this next one here is a knit. So we're going to go, with our repair, we're going to go knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Okay, so we're starting with a knit. So we'll get our strand up on there and do a knit where we just lift that up and over the top. And now this next one needs to be a purl. So we'll lift the strand up on there and make sure it's on the left, and then just go scooping through. And then I realized, see, that is twisted the way I scooped it through, but I realized I always go back and put it on the left needle just out of habit, and then I untwist it and put it back on the right. So just make sure you watch those when you go scooping through with the purling, that it's oriented, the stitch mount is correct. Okay, so there's my next purl, and I want that to be on the left side of the stitch and go up and in, down and through, and then I untwist it and put it back over. I didn't even realize I did that until, you know, I'm paying attention and showing you. Okay, so that was the alternating row 5. So we just should have another couple 4 rows of garter stitch. Yep, 4 rows. We have 4 strands remaining behind here, or 3 strands and my bind off. Okay, I've worked everything back up. I've done all my cables, and you know, it does look a little bit rough, and so I'll try to ease everything back in and block that out better. But I'm happy knowing that there's not a miscrossed, or not a miscrossed cable, but a cable where there shouldn't have been. So I just have 1 horizontal strand left, and as I work through that, I'm going to go ahead and put that back on the right hand needle so that I can carry on and do my bind off over again. All right, the repair is done, and again, it is not perfect. It'll help if I re-block it, and I intend to do so, but I do prefer this little bumpiness at, you know, rather than having a whole extra cable, which was clearly a mistake. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed seeing the surgery of block 10 and my deconstruction and then fixing of all of that, and maybe learned a little something too. Drop me a comment down below and let me know about things that you've taken the time to fix and why that was important to you. I'd love to hear your story, and even show me a photo if you like. All right, join us over on the Facebook and Ravelry groups, and happy knitting.